So I've been a Sony shooter for a while, but I started with Nikon and have recently been shooting more with them, but I have no brand bias at all. I'm happy to shoot with whatever camera as they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and especially with colors and in-camera profiles. So I want to do a quick shootout with one of my Sonys and my Nikon to actually compare what those are, as the strength of my cheap Nikon has inspired me to fix the weaknesses of my more pro-level Sonys. Okay, so this is the Sony a7C II and this is the FX3. So let me show you the different picture profiles the best way I know how. So this is picture profile 5, which is the monotone black and white. And I'll show you how to make that black and white profile in camera, as well as customize the colors to your liking, as it's easier than you think to get good JPEGs, no editing necessary. Well, except for those times when having raw files might actually save the shoot. And I have a brand new program that I've been using for that too. Yet first, before I show you how to simply adjust it, let's just compare my budget Nikon to my more expensive Sony in a real world shootout. Okay, I'm here with my lovely and talented friend.
Hi.
And I'm gonna test out both my Nikon and my Sony. I want to do a comparison now that I've adjusted my Sony picture profiles to see which one is actually better, the in-camera JPEGs. And if you can tell the difference between my $2,000 camera and my $600 camera, I'm gonna go to one of my favorite settings, which is a hot dog train, which is actually a train that's been converted into a restaurant that serves hot dogs. Okay, so let's take some pics. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, even press record. Okay. So I'm just going to show you some footage and pics quickly, and I'm purposely not matching the GoPro footage to the pics displayed on screen because I want you to see if you can tell the difference between the Sony snaps or the Nikon pics and which you actually prefer. So we'll just call this camera A and this camera B. If you can tell which shots were JPEGs untouched versus edited RAWs. That was just like epic. Let me do some color. So did one stand out for you? And also know that most of the time with camera A, I was also using a super cheap $100 manual focus lens, so this could have skewed the results as well. But A was my Nikon ZFC, and camera B then was my Sony a7C II. And these were the in-camera JPEGs, and these were the RAWs that I edited with this new program. Now let me just say that I've also had to adjust the original conceit or premise of this video because honestly making cool in-camera JPEG settings are great, and I still am using these picture profiles, especially with street photography and casual shoots. But when you take what you think is a good shot, a good JPEG, and then you get home and see the raw file on your desktop compared to that JPEG, you'd be a fool to not want to try to make it better. So when I got these photos and footage back, I especially loved, as I presumed I would, both Nikon's black and white JPEG setting and the Sony one that I customized as is, along with some of the other ones in color, and this is the big old but again, when I opened the raw files up and started editing them, well, then the main push of this video had to be adjusted as well. So picking a clear winner with my pricier Sony versus my cheap Nikon, or JPEGs versus RAW, it's a lot of overlapping variables, but I still was surprised by which shots were actually my favorite. And I purposely picked an unfair fight, basically a $2,800 setup versus a $725 one between my Sony a7C II, a full frame 33 megapixel prosumer hybrid camera, a legit powerhouse with an 85mm f1.4 autofocus lens with my high-end Freewell magnetic VNDs versus my crop sensor entry-level hybrid, the Nikon ZFC, which I bought used with a cheap manual focus 35mm f.95 lens and a budget Amazon ND, and it's a 20.9 megapixel DX format CMOS sensor. And I've been surprised in general with how well the Nikon performs, as it punches way above its weight class, but I legit wasn't expecting for it to hold up so well against the a7C II. And I'll continue to sprinkle in pics from this location. And way before all this, and before I adjusted the profiles on my Sony, I was finding myself reaching for the Nikon 9 times out of 10, because generally speaking, Sony colors nowadays are, for me, quite boring, where even their black and white feels lifeless. Okay, so I wanted to show you the difference between my black and white, which is a subtle change and adjustment, but it has a big impact in my opinion. So this is my picture profile 5, and this is Sony's black and white. Now, as you can see, the blacks are lifted, there's less contrast, and for me, it's less dramatic, but that overall has a general effect that I think makes this just a little bit lifeless. And so just by punching things up, changing the curve a little bit, you get this more high contrast look, which I just think has a lot of drama in it. And it makes me want to pick up this camera and shoot it more. And I never used black and white before with the Sony. As you can see, let me get the blacks in my shirt are gonna be a lot more lifted. So there's Sony's, mine, Sony's, mine. Subtle differences, but big impact. Sometimes it's nice to see it in different environments. This is indoors. This has a look to it. I wouldn't mind recording sort of an A-roll with it. Let me change it to Sony just so you can see the difference. Okay. I don't know, I'm bored. Just by looking at this shot, I'm bored. There isn't enough anchoring me to the scene just because those blacks are so lifted. So I check again, and all of a sudden it just seems a bit more compelling. It might be just me, but that's why I think adjusting and customizing your picture profiles to your liking might not be to everybody's liking, but as long as it's to your liking, is effective in helping you shoot more. Okay, now this is my second tutorial on how you can easily customize Sony picture profiles, as I previously wanted to create more neutral colors in my 8-bit cameras to mimic my 10-bit cameras by showing you how to make a C Cinetone for my A7C and a Z Cinetone for my ZV-1, because Sony's default no profile color was so weirdly saturated and bad. And I'm thankful to now have S Cinetone on all my newer Sonys, but now inversely, I want to show you how to also adjust these 10-bit cameras for a less sleepy and more punchy but appealing image this time, and to mimic my Nikon, because the in-camera black and white setting is so good, among their other color controls too, and so good that it now goes everywhere with me. And I took this to the beach, which is where I first fell for this black and white profile, and I was like, okay, maybe the ZFC is just going to be my main monochrome camera. To then I took it to Disneyland, where I thought, okay, maybe this will just be my quick travel cam. To then, as you saw, I took some portraits with it, and I thought, okay, maybe this might be just my camera. Until I saw my sad-looking Sony a7C II collecting dust, and I thought, there's gotta be a better way to make this superior camera look superior. And so I started tinkering, and it wasn't that hard, and I'm constantly tweaking it to get that retro look, which ironically is very contemporary. And this is what makes Fuji cameras so popular right now, and they even just added a film simulation wheel on the new X-T50, and then Panasonic's S9 has that LUT button. I think Nikon's color and picture control should be in that conversation as well, which I only recently discovered when I rented the Nikon ZF before I bought the ZFC, and have been gravitating to it. And it's not just because of the retro body, but that does surprisingly have an effect, especially when compared to my Sony's boring body designs, hence wrapping all mine in skins. But no, it's because Nikon, Panasonic, and Fuji have great in-camera JPEG settings, which Sony doesn't have. With no need to edit, you can simply just shoot and share a pic. But first, the cool thing with Nikon is that you can peruse and edit emulations prior to loading them into your camera to get something similar to Fuji's, but with the freedom to customize them by using Nikon's picture control editor. And even though Sony now lets you load in LUTs, I way prefer this method. And this probably deserves a separate video unto itself, but I have linked below the tutorial that I use and the website to go to edit and download the presets. Yet, like Sony, with Nikon, you can also modify the looks in camera as well, which is easy enough, but here I actually think Sony does it better and gives you a bit more freedom to adjust the profiles and white balance to customize and start experimenting yourself. And this is how I fixed their black and white. But I'll also show you how you can make some interesting color profiles too. And again, once you see how to do it, you'll be able to adjust it however you want. So you can get that immediate gratification that a good JPEG can get you, because frankly, editing is typically hard. It's labor intensive and it's easily the least fun part of photography for me. But it shouldn't be, especially nowadays with all this AI tech. So for the times when you didn't get the shot you wanted on the day from either a Nikon, a Sony, or even a Game Boy Color, or you're taking portraits on a hot dog train and you want your model's eyes to pop or her skin to be as smooth as possible, then there's no getting around the need to edit. And that's where I found a program that's actually easy to use to get the image where you want it, or to get the colors as neutral or as vibey as you'd like. And I never understood why there hasn't been the same kind of photo editing tools that you can get on your phone for the desktop. And yes, Lightroom is great and gives you tons of control, but for me, it's missing those quick, easy clicks or presets that can easily transform your RAW files to send to a client, or just quickly add that mood to your JPEGs to post online, or do legit pro level editing. So that's where Luminar Neo comes in, as they are the sponsor of this segment. And before I get shade, I was really dragging my feet partnering with them, as I get requests like this all the time, because I was worried that it was going to be just one more complex program for me to relearn, which is probably why I'm still using Premiere, and hence why I spent all this time making in-camera JPEGs. But even with that, there's a reason I always recommend shooting in JPEG and RAW for professional work, obviously, but even as a hobbyist, as you don't want to get locked into only having a black and white photo or some overly stylized emulation. And that's what most struck me with my Nikon and Sony shootout. I love the black and whites and some of the color shots, but I couldn't leave them as is. As my biggest pain points when I'm working with portraits is with blemish removals and having a good clone tool and getting good skin textures and relighting the face and fixing the eyes and maybe even increasing the background bokeh. And then my second problem is getting good colors, but there are tons of presets or LUTs in the program and you can pick up a ton more. Yet there's also a bunch of effects to experiment with, or you can even change the sky completely with a click. So Luminar Neo is essentially an image editor driven by AI with so many tools and key features like Gen Erase, HDR Merge, Panorama Stitching, Noiseless AI, Upscale AI, Portrait Bokeh, Background Removal, Focus Stacking, Super Sharp AI, Magic Light, and again, way more tools that I'm going to mention here, but it's a lot more intuitive than Adobe's programs, and just after an hour or two with it, literally does everything I wanted to do in Lightroom and Photoshop with all the AI stuff, or just simple ways to develop the image. Now I took this photo with my macro extension tube and a soft lens, so I wanted to clean up this image, and to my surprise I found some cool critters inside this flower, but you can see how straightforward it is to develop. And then the sky enhancement stuff is cool too, so here's one of the pics that I took at Disneyland, originally a black and white JPEG, but I wanted to see what I could do with a random RAW. As an example of a boring picture I'd probably just put in the trash, but maybe if I could change the sky, maybe I'd keep it. But the program masked things out so quickly and well, and led to some interesting images that I will probably still trash, but I also wanted to see how I could do this with something more difficult, blurred out trees in the background. And clearly this isn't easy for any program, but with a little patience, you can make anything work. So it's great for beginners, and also the more experience you have, the better you can make the image. But again, I have most been using Luminar with portraits. So I'm not trying to sell you here on anything, or well, not really, because if you like your workflow, stick with your programs. But if you're an idiot like me, look into Luminar Neo, linked below, and you get 10% off, and see if it improves not just the quality of your work, but the speed at which you can get an edit done. And now here's how you edit a pic before you press the shutter. And I will list out my quick settings now, but I will also write it all out in the description below for a few custom profiles. So first, just go in your picture profile menu and pick any number that you'd like. For me, I put the black and and white in picture profile 5, and this subtle color shift in picture profile 6, and this more vibey green profile in picture profile 10, and I leave picture profile 11 as Cinetone alone, but play around for yourself and don't be afraid of adjusting the white balance too, as it can give you cool effects or just dial in the look. Okay, so it's not just about customizing the picture profiles, it's also about customizing the white balance. Okay, so this is my first picture profile that I'm using. It's my picture profile 10. It's my vibey green look. And as you can see, the colors are pretty good, but I had to drastically affect the white balance. So my white balance currently is at 59,000 Kelvin. I'm at blue 2.5 and magenta 1.75. So if I was to turn this on to auto white balance, you'll see what the effect will actually look like. And that's what it looks like with auto white balance. So that's why I'm changing the white balance to get my final look. So let's go back to that custom temperature filter that I got. As you can see, I sort of enjoy this look. It's very punchy, vibey, greeny. Okay, so if you like the temperature, but you want to adjust the colors, you can obviously do that. So let's stick to 4900. I'm gonna go into our adjustments here. I'm all the way green. I am all the way green and all the way blue. I am all the way going down to magenta, warming it up. And I am at on blue 0.5 and magenta 2.75. I don't know if this is a good look. As you can see, I'm at a very cool 3300 Kelvin. Not a good look. So I can go really warm or I can go really cool. So that's just a note also to play with your white balance settings if you want, but you don't have to. And specifically, you shouldn't to make the black and white. And here's how you do that. So let's walk through the black and white now and then one color profile to show you how I do it next. So again, pick whatever profile you'd like, and I'm using 5 here. Click forward, and then first let's go into color mode where you will pick black and white. Then menu back, and now change the gamma to movie. Then menu back, and let's adjust the black level to -4. Now black gamma to narrow and also -4. And menu back, and then this is completely unnecessary, but I desaturate to -4 just for good luck. And you're done with this one. And here I will show you my vibey green profile, which has a few more steps. So in picture profile 10, I change the black levels to -6, the gamma to still, the black gamma range to middle, and the level to 0, the need to manual, the point to 100, and the slope to +5, the color mode to S gamut 3, which is the unusual part here, the saturation will be +10, color phase to -4, and this is your green and magenta slider. The negatives are more green and the positives are more magenta. Then your color depth, which allows you to adjust each particular color on a scale of +7 to -7. So here is red -4, green +2, blue +2, cyan +2, magenta -6, and yellow +4. But seriously, play with all these yourself. Now, detail is the next big category, and like I did in my last video where I did this, I will link Sony's article explaining what everything does in the picture profiles, and it's a quick read. But let's finish up and manually adjust here. Go down to BW balance, type 4, limit 6, crispening 4, highlight detail 4, and then you're done. And I'm not expecting for this specific customization to suit everybody, but I wanted to just show you how to do it and maybe give you the courage to experiment with it on your own. And then don't forget to go in the white balance, as you can quickly go from auto to a custom one. But what I'm now realizing is that the Sony versus Nikon, or the Pro versus budget, and the JPEG versus RAW thing, that specs may not be everything. And clearly the A7C2 is a better camera in every way. Well, almost every way, because some of my favorite shots were from the ZFC. And even though the quality is lacking compared to the A7C2, there is just something to the experience that you get with using a camera, the look, the feel, and the likelihood that you're going to actually pick it up and take it with you and share a shot. And this is why people are now pre-ordering every mid-range Fuji on the market, and why I landed on the Nikon, and I will be doing a whole review for it soon, and why better is not always, well, better, whereas usually the less editing I need to do, definitely the better. And I don't have to do any of this customization on my Nikon. So my Sony has advantages, especially when I want to edit my RAWs, but sometimes the thought of then spending hours culling and editing and trying to not just find the right image, but then attempt to perfect it, which we all know is a fool's errand, because there's wisdom in knowing not when you've struck gold with a shot or with an edit, but when you actually found good enough. So of course I'd always prefer that I got it on the day, but I am thankful that I finally found a program that I actually get. But for most cases, I'm going to tinker with my JPEG settings in camera so I can snap more in more diverse locations to focus more on the subject matter and really just spending less time on my laptop in a dark room and more time out in the world, connecting with people and places and having my camera there with me to capture whatever sliver of life I see or image I want to create in that moment to share with you. That for some still unknown reason is something I'm driven to do, which has nothing to do with having the perfect camera or getting the perfect shot. Because for me, now finding that sweet spot of good enough is way more valuable than gold. So I hope you found this helpful, and check out Luminar Neo, linked below, if you also like mining for precious metals and finding that magic in the edit, which there is merit to that as well. And thank you for your time and attention. Please consider following along and subscribing, as I have a bunch more videos about videos like this on the way. So thanks again. Bye guys.